Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Perseverance Theater's virtual space. And our event this evening is the Wildlife of Alaska Community Conversation. I'm Leslie Ishii, the artistic director here at Perseverance Theater, and I am so grateful and excited to see you all tuned in. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we do, our practice, our way is to start with land acknowledgement. And so please join us here at Perseverance Theater in acknowledging that we reside on the unceded territories of the Occoquan and the neighbors to the south, the Takaquan, on what is currently known as Douglas and Juneau, Alaska. We acknowledge that Tlingit peoples have been stewards of this land since time immemorial, and we are grateful for that stewardship and incredible care. We also recognize the series of unjust actions that attempted to remove them from their land, which includes forced relocations and the burning of villages. We honor the relationships that exist between Tlingit peoples, their lands, their ancestors, and future generations. And we aspire to work toward healing and liberation, recognizing our paths are intertwined in the complex histories of the colonization in Alaska. We acknowledge that we arrived here by listening to the peoples, elders, the lessons from the past, and these stories carry us as we weave a healthier world for future generations. We also invite you to join us in honoring and expressing deep gratitude to the Dena'ina peoples of South Central Alaska, where we also conduct our work in what is known as Anchorage, Alaska. So join with us in finding ways to recognize, honor, and enact this acknowledgement in meaningful ways. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Natives have been and continue to be integral to the well being of Alaska. One cannot be without the other. To love Alaska and call it home requires honoring this truth. And Alaska is and always has been a Native place, and it is our responsibility to act accordingly. As a creative company here at Perseverance Theater, we are committed to learning from, meaningfully including, and holding space and strengthening our work with Alaska Native peoples. We honor their brilliant, vibrant languages, cultures, ways of life, and relationships too, with all aspects of their worlds being bringing knowledges and understandings we cannot know or access without their consent or partnership. We seek to build a right relationship with the Native peoples of Alaska because it will make our work better. It already has, and because it is the right thing to do. Perseverance Theater honors and respects the culture, the traditions, languages, and ways of life of the Alaska Native and all Native Indigenous ancestors, elders, and their descendants of the past, this vibrant present, and certainly well into the future. So with that, Gunashish, Haiwa, Toyaksin, Chinangeli. Thank you so much. And thank you to Hune, Lance Twitchell, and Laquene, Liz Medicine Crow, for their contributions to this living land acknowledgement language, this document that we share with you this evening as part of our practice. So again, thank you for joining us. How exciting that we have some incredible guests, not all human, which I'm really excited about. So with that, I want to also share with you what inspired this evening is we are opening our next show tomorrow evening. It's the Spirit of the Valley. Again, opening tomorrow evening and running for the next 2 weekends. So please join us. You can go to ptalaska.org and buy tickets there. You can also find us on our Facebook page, the Perseverance Theater Facebook page, and find information there and all about the cast as well. It's an all Indigenous cast, and this play is written by our local Tlingit playwright and award-winning playwright, Frank Kaash Katasse. So very excited to bring this virtual premiere of this play to all of you throughout Alaska and throughout the US. And we've had viewers actually globally. So that's the beauty of being virtual. We get to share this work with you, this exciting new work. So with that too, I can also share with you a Tlingit Christmas Carol will be coming as part of our holiday offerings. That will drop in episodes the first Friday right after Thanksgiving. and then each Friday after that on Christmas. So very exciting. Oh, that's a really cool piece too by our resident playwright Vera Starbard Klinkit Denina, and it's clever, it's funny as well, and it certainly has a lot of beautiful depth to it. It's a Christmas Carol gone Klinkit. So check that out. That's it's. I've been seeing some of the work on it. Fantastic. Um, Also, we'll have a surprise holiday offering, which I'm really excited about. But it's a little bit of a teaser I'm giving you right now. So we will announce that very soon, and not to be missed. And I don't believe you'll be disappointed at all. I think it's very exciting as well. So all these offerings coming up. Really excited to be a part of your lives and your viewing experience. So now it is my honor and pleasure to introduce um, Irene Martinko, who is our literary and producing associate here at Perseverance Theater. She dramaturged and assistant directed a show this last season called With. And you also might recognize her because she was in the production of Silent Sky this last season as well. And she played Margaret, the sister of Henrietta Leavitt. A wonderful, wonderful production that was in Juneau and in Anchorage. And you should all know that Irene is multi-talented. While she's an incredibly talented literary and producing associate, she's all an actress. She's also an incredible singer, and she's had roles in Shrek the Musical and in Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, amongst many other roles. So here we have this incredibly multi-talented human with us to be our moderator for this wonderful conversation tonight. So please give a warm virtual welcome to Irene Martinko. Hi, Irene.
That was so nice.
Sure, my pleasure. It's easy to lift you up. You're wonderful human and so multi-talented. So very, very easy to do. But Irene, so we have an awesome conversation right here you're about to conduct. But I just wanted to tee this up a little bit. So The Spirit of the Valley, our play that opens tomorrow night, inspired you to put together this conversation as part of our programming. Can you share with us a little bit about that inspiration?
Absolutely. So, The Spirit of the Valley, I am so excited about. Frank Katasse has written this play that it's beautiful, it's hilarious, it just cracks me up. And it's just this beautiful play about protecting our environment and caring for the land and caring for the wildlife on the land. And the really fun thing about this play is that a lot of these characters are actually animals of Alaska. We have eagle, we have raven, we have the wolves, and we have the bear. And so we thought it would be really fun to take some time to really appreciate the wildlife of Alaska, to learn more about them, and to learn about how we can protect them.
I'm very excited. Well, thank you. I mean, that's perfect introduction. So why don't I'll go off screen. I'll be right off screen if you need anything, enjoying this conversation. So with that, take it away, Irene, to introduce our guest.
And we'll see you soon, Leslie. Yeah, we thought that, it's been a stressful week for everybody, and it'll be nice to take some time to talk about some really, really cool animals. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our amazing panelists, and I'll start with Patrick Lampe. Patrick Lampe is the executive director and has worked of the Alaska Zoo and has worked there since 1986. He started his first 7 years as a zookeeper and then progressed to curator for the next 13 years, and now he's the executive director. So he's done it all. He has experienced all facets of the zoo over the years, from zoo administration to animal care to veterinary procedures to facilities maintenance to education programs. He knows every side of that zoo. He has fostered and developed many valuable working relationships with state and federal wildlife agencies. He is a member of the Polar Bear Response Team, an interagency group working to increase capability for emergency responses for polar bears on the north slope of Alaska. That is so cool. This team has developed response protocols and staged equipment on the north slope for the quickest response to assist polar bears in the event of an oil spill. It's really important. Patrick was instrumental in the Alaska Zoo's relocation of Maggie, who is one of the African elephants who was at the Alaska Zoo and was relocated to PAWS, which is the Performing Animal Welfare Society. He also participated in the transport of the 3 African elephants from the Toronto Zoo. Thank you so much for being here, Patrick. We're so thrilled to have you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here and have this discussion with everyone.
Of course, we are honored. And our next panelist, we have Lily G. She is currently working for the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center. She is an Alaskan transplant who first moved to Alaska in 2008 to attend the University of Alaska Fairbanks. While earning her Bachelor of Science in Wildlife Biology and a minor in Outdoor Recreation and Guiding Management, she was an intern at the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center in 2009. After completing her degree, she gained experience in education, working as a camp director, wildlife associate, community college instructor, and program manager, developing educational programs for all ages. After almost a decade away, Lily is happy to be on the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center team as the Director of Education. Welcome, Lily. Thank you so much for being here. Wow, this is a group of very multi-talented people. All right, and our last panelist is Sheila Swanberg, last but not least, I should say, a lifelong resident of Alaska. She grew up in Sitka, obtained a degree in wildlife biology at the University of Fairbanks, or Alaska Fairbanks, which is actually where Lily went, and they realized just now that they had a class together or knew each other then and completely didn't know before coming to this panel, which is a very cool connection. She returned to the island as soon as she could. She started working as a wildlife interpreter at the Alaska Raptor Center in 2015. Just supposed to be a summer job, but she ended up falling in love with the birds and the work that she was doing. So when a more permanent position opened up, she jumped at the chance, acting as an avian care assistant with a lot more cleaning and hands-on work than the interpreting was, but she got to be a lot closer to the resident raptors and the rehabilitation patients. After a year of that work, she was promoted to avian care specialist and was assigned to work with specific birds, training them, designing their enclosures, and bringing them out for presentations with the public. These amazing animals have taught her so much. Thank you so much for joining us, Sheila. And you're going to show us our special guest. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Before you guys jump into the conversation, we can totally see you. We can hear you.
Awesome.
I would love for you to introduce our fabulous feathered panelist over here.
Absolutely. Just let me. You don't want the mouse at all. Okay. Sorry. All right. So this is Sitka. She's one of my coworkers here at the Alaska Raptor Center. She actually started off as a patient who had been hit by a car up in Ninilchik. So she has several injuries that prevent her from being released, which we try and find homes for any bird that can't be released. So she ended up staying with us. So her injuries, she was originally hit by a car and dragged underneath for a little bit. So she had a large hole in her wing, the patagium area, which is from the shoulder to the wrist. There's a big ligament that goes across there, and then she had a hole right underneath it. So what that could have done, if she landed in a tree, she could have gotten a branch stuck through there and then torn that ligament completely. She also had a second injury that was just as debilitating. On her right foot, she is actually missing one of her toes. So the halix is the opposing digit that allows them to grab things. Her halix had to be amputated due to how damaged it was. Her second digit on the center of this foot also has some damage to it. The talon does not grow right anymore, so we have to do continuous maintenance on it. Otherwise, it grows wrong. But she came to us in 2002, so she has been a professional for quite a while now, a lot longer than me. Most summers, she's down in Ketchikan, but this summer she ended up having to stay with us just because our facility in Ketchikan didn't go the way it should have.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Sitka. What an amazing story. I'm so glad she's okay. I'm so glad that she's here and that you guys were able to protect her and to save her. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and she teaches a lot of people about eagles. every year. It's always a lot more impressive for people to see them up close and get some idea of what's being protected.
I really don't think I realized until just now how big an eagle is. But looking at you with Sitka, she's huge. It's amazing.
Yep, and if she were to open my arms, her wing would go past my hand. We've got a wingspan of 7 feet.
That's amazing. You really can't tell when you're just driving your car in Alaska and you see one on a lamppost or something like that.
I mean, Sitka kind of makes it a little more extreme because she is a big female. The males are a little bit smaller, but she's on the largest part of the spectrum for eagles.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into a great conversation. First of all, where in Alaska are you all currently streaming in? Start with Patrick.
I'm up here in Anchorage at the Alaska Zoo in my office.
And Lily?
Yeah, I'm reaching you virtually from Girdwood, Alaska.
And Sheila?
We are here in Sitka, Alaska, right at the Alaska Raptor Center. This is our main auditorium that we usually do presentations in.
You know, I think virtual theater is definitely a new thing for us. And one of the really amazing things that we've discovered is just how many people we can reach now and how many people we can work with and partner with. This kind of conversation couldn't have happened if we were doing things in person. So I think it's really cool that we're able to reach parts of the state we're not usually able to reach. So let's jump right in. Let's just go around and say what organization you work for, what they do, and talk a little bit about what you do to help make that happen. Anyone can just jump in.
All right. You go.
Well, I'm the executive director at the Alaska Zoo, and the Alaska Zoo has been around for 51 years now. Had a really unusual beginning, a lady taking in an elephant, but she also started taking in other orphaned and injured animals, and that became the mission of the zoo. Orphaned and injured animals, you know, we'd all prefer to see the animals out in the wild where they belong, but there are orphaned and injured that can't survive on their own. And as Sheila was saying, you know, they can be great ambassadors for their species. So that's kind of the mission of the Alaska Zoo, to care for orphaned and injured animals. We do short-term care for a lot of orphans that we can't keep permanently, but then help work with Fish and Game and U.S. Fish and Wildlife to find suitable homes all over the United States. And then, as you mentioned before, we do some work through interagencies on polar bear response for oil spills. And then lots of work in our education department on conservation. And, you know, everybody, you know, all the people in the panel, they do really great facilities and amazing work.
Lily, how about you?
I am with the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center, or AWCC, as we're fondly called in our community. And we are a sanctuary for wildlife, and we focus on preserving wildlife through conservation, education, research, and quality animal care. So I come in mostly on the education side of that. I'm our director of education, and we offer programs to folks who come and visit us, and like so many of us are discovering right now, finding a whole new audience through virtual programming, which has been a fun challenge in itself. One of the programs that AWCC is kind of known for is the Wood Bison Reintroduction Program. One of the conservation efforts we helped facilitate. Wood bison came to AWCC from Canada and were eventually released. So we hope to be able to be involved in more programs like that and continue to educate people through various fun platforms.
Very cool. And Sheila.
All right, so we both work for the Alaska Raptor Center. It's dedicated to rehabilitation of wild raptors, research, and education. It actually started out very small in 1984 with just one guy, a vet, fixing up a bald eagle in their garage/backyard. And slowly we got some land donated to us. We This facility actually used to be a school that shut down, so we got it pretty cheap. Had a lot of donors give us money to expand the enclosures and make them more easy for the birds to go through physical therapy after they've been healed. So for the rehab portion, we treat any bird, even though we're called the Alaska Raptor Center, we will treat anything with feathers. So from the size of a hummingbird to a trumpeter swan, we do everything in between. We do primarily get a lot of raptors, though. They just tend to show up. Since we are here in Southeast Alaska, we see a lot of bald eagles. Right now we have 15 that are currently being healed in our main flight area. For research, we usually don't do the research ourselves, but we compile everything, like all the numbers we get of how many birds we get every year. We'll compile that. We'll also, we had a group come in and wanted to do GPS tracking of some of our released birds, and we helped with that. When it comes to education, most years we have thousands of tourists that come through here that we get to talk to about the birds, conservation, everything about that. But this year we've kind of been trying live streams every week and whatever else we're capable of doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I love how each of your organizations is so dedicated to conservation and education. It's amazing. And protecting the wildlife of Alaska. I think it, you know, it's one of the things that makes the state so special and so beautiful. And part of the reason people always travel to come visit, because they want to see a moose or a whale. Let's talk a little bit about what kind of animals you typically work with. And I think, you know, Sheila and Sitka already addressed that a lot, but you can keep talking about it. I think it's so interesting.
Was that to me or?
It would, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. Your voice is very quiet compared to everybody else.
Oh, I'm sorry. It might be because of my headphones. I can try taking them off. All right, go ahead.
That's much better.
Better.
All right, so what was the question?
What kind of animals do you typically work with? I mean, you've talked about that a little bit, but.
So it is primarily birds. This year we've had a lot of western screech owls. They're, can't use both hands, but they're usually about 5 inches tall. We had several that were just fledglings that we had to get to the point where they could be released, and then release them without them starting to like humans, because we don't want to become raising imprints. We also deal with a lot of songbirds during springtime because people are chopping down stuff, and we end up with a lot of baby birds that we have to take care of. And then, of course, there's the eagles. A lot of their injuries happen from interactions with man-made objects. So they'll run into buildings, power lines. We have several that were found at the dump in Juneau after getting into a carcass that had been euthanized. So they were showing symptoms of poisoning, which was fun. We also have a tundra swan right now that's being treated in a pond area. And then, of course, there's all the residents. We have many owls that we work with, a bunch of hawks. We have Harlan's red-tailed hawks and western red-tailed hawks, which look completely different, but they are genetically the same. Yeah.
Amazing. And Patrick and Lily, what about you?
Well, at the Alaska Zoo, we have, I think, 10 species of birds right now. Polar bears, black bears, brown bears, wolves, wolverines, coyotes, reindeer, moose. We have a few species, cold weather species that are not from Alaska, such as Amur tigers, snow leopards, Tibetan yaks, back-trained camels. But yeah, we get in lots of orphaned animals. One year, I think it was a particularly, I call it a bad year because there were so many orphaned animals, and we had 11 bear cubs through the zoo in one summer. I love the years when we get no orphans, which are unfortunately not enough. But yeah, so we have a variety of species, and currently we have one orphaned black bear cub that will be going to a facility in Wisconsin once it passes all of its medical tests.
And Lily, how about you?
Yeah, so at AWCC, we also care for animals that have been injured or orphaned. We might not have as high a volume in comparison. A lot of the animals that come into our care end up staying with us. A few of them end up moving on to other facilities. And we're mostly terrestrial, although we have a few birds in the mix. All of our animals occur in Alaska, and we have moose like this guy right here, and wood bison, and reindeer, and caribou, bears, wolves, foxes. On the education side, I work with a lot of our animals that we do encounters with, including our Sitka black-tailed deer, North American porcupines, and a couple of ferrets, which although they are not Alaskan animals, they're meant to represent some larger weasels.
Oh, I love it. I feel like we've covered all the bases, which is amazing. Well, speaking of animals, we have one with us. Sitka, amazing employee of the Alaska Raptor Center. What can she teach us about eagles today?
Well, I can tell you guys one of my favorite things that she gets to teach people is how heavy they are. So I like to make people guess. You guys want to guess real fast?
I'm bad at guessing, you guys.
13
Bad at
pounds.
guessing? It's a lot less than you think. So Sitka right here is only about 14 pounds. So a lot smaller than a dog. She does have a bunch of hollow bones. And of course, her wingspan. Oh, big stretch. Well done. So birds have hollow bones, which I'm sure you all know. But when they inhale, they actually fill part of their bones with air because they have air sacs in their bones. So they actually get lighter when they're flying, which is really cool.
Wow. And what does Sitka eat?
Right now, she is eating deer meat. I keep trying to give her pieces of mice because I chopped them up specially for tonight, but she keeps dropping those on the floor. So she only wants the deer meat right now. But we do give her a huge variety in her diet just because we like to keep them mentally stimulated, and offering new foods can be really rewarding for them. So she'll get whatever fish we have, of course, because these guys eat a lot of fish. We actually get most of our fish from the local fish plants. They'll donate the food, or they have donated the food for years, which really has kept us afloat. But we also get a lot of meat donated by local hunters. When they catch something new, they want to empty their freezer, so they'll bring us their old meat. So she gets deer meat, moose meat, occasionally bear. We've also, one of her favorite things to eat is salmon eggs. So when they're fresh coming in, she'll eat them. But if they've been frozen at all, she won't touch them because, you know, it's a little bit picky. And then, of course, we order rats and mice for our hawks and owls because that's what they eat. And she's supposed to like them as a treat, but not tonight.
Love it. She's picky.
Well, I mean, she's allowed to be. She's a star.
And so as an ambassador bird, what does that mean?
So it means she gets to be seen a lot with by people normally. So normally we send her down to Ketchikan. She is a glove bird down there, and people come through constantly, like several thousand a day. And she gets to just demonstrate how amazing her species is and inspire people to care about the birds.
Great. I have to ask everyone in the panel, and I don't know if this is an easy question or a hard one. What is your favorite animal?
Ooh, that is a hard one.
That's not even fair to ask.
It is a
I
difficult.
can't answer it myself. I don't know how you will.
I do have a favorite here at the Alaska Zoo, and it was the one of the first animals that I cared for when I started here, and that would be Jake, our Kodiak brown bear, who will be 39 years old this winter.
Oh.
Amazing. How old do they typically live?
Usually not 39.
Wow,
Probably more often in the 20s.
that's amazing.
I think for me it changes. I'm always trying to keep up to date with the newest things. We're learning about different animals, and when I learn something new, then that's my new favorite animal that week.
It is a tough call.
It's a very tough call. If you had asked before I started working at the Alaska Raptor Center, it definitely would have been wolves. I have so many books on wolves. I used to collect them, and I just absolutely loved them. But once I started working with birds, it like Lily said, it changes depending on what I'm learning about. Right now, the goshawk is my favorite because goshawks are amazing, so pretty. But it's also regularly the great horned owls or the western screech owls or the eagles. Every bird, really.
All the birds, anything with feathers, right?
Exactly.
Well, you were talking about when you learn something new about an animal. I'm curious if you have any fun facts, and that's for everyone in the panel, fun facts about any animals that you think are particularly interesting.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite things I always like to tell, because it's surprising to people so often, is that porcupines can't shoot their quills. Cartoons lied to us as children. I'm sorry. But also, then when you start learning more about them, you learn that the tips of them are covered in microscopic barbs that allow them to enter the skin so easily, but then they don't want to come back out. So it's a really ingenious defense system. And so right now, porcupines are my new favorite.
All right. Well, if Patrick's not going to go next, then I will. So I really like owl feet. I know I have an eagle right here, but owl feet are super cool because they're what's called zygodactyl. They have 2 talons forward and 2 back for balance issues, except when they attack. They're attacking with 3 talons forward and 1 back because one of their talons can flop back and forth, which I think is really cool.
Oh my God, I'm learning so much in the span of like 5 minutes, which is amazing.
I guess a fun fact would be that the spots on a snow leopard are mirrored on their skin. So if you shave them, you would see the same rosettes mirrored on their skin.
That's really cool. Had no idea. Those are good. Those are good. I'm gonna have to write those down so I don't forget. And I can pull it out at parties. Right?
If you ever allowed to go to parties again.
Yeah, right. My virtual parties, I should say. My social distance parties, as if I'm having those. So, we've talked a lot about the things that you guys do to protect the wildlife in Alaska. Talk a little bit about why it's important that we protect the wildlife.
Well, they're part of all of our culture. And the animals, being ambassadors, it's part of Alaska. It's respect for the land, the nature, the animals. They're, the canaries in the mine for our environment. They're such an integral part of our whole lives. And I guess some people that live in strictly urban areas and where there's not much wildlife just can't really appreciate it. Us going for hikes and seeing bears and wildlife and have moose in our yards. It's a constant reminder that we're living in their land and should try to appreciate and respect them.
Love that. We're living in their land. Absolutely.
Yeah. There are so many reasons to preserve wildlife. And Patrick touched on so many of them. They are a really great connector of people all over. I imagine that between where the 3 of us are and you, Irene, that we might even be seeing some of the same species in some of our public spaces and parks. Especially right now, we have birds that have just flown over our heads and are headed south, and maybe some of them are going to wind up in your yard. So they're a great connector, and preserving them is not only important, but also watching them and seeing what they're doing, because they're telling us ahead of time the next thing that we need to be looking out for if we're paying close enough attention.
Yeah, you guys seem to have said most of it. But I really like that There's just so much biodiversity out there, and we really need to protect it before it starts going away, because it is going away. Even you can kind of see it right now, but we just want to preserve what we have, because it might not always be there, and we at least want to connect with it while it's here.
I love that. Thank you. And for someone like me who doesn't have a job working with animals and who doesn't know a whole lot, I would love to know, what can someone like me do to protect the wildlife?
There's stuff everyone can do to protect wildlife. I mean, and it really depends on your strengths and your interests as well. Something that's been really gaining popularity right now is community scientists or citizen scientists. And so there are apps you can download even on your phone. And if you see a bird, even if you don't know what it is, you can post a picture of it. And there are scientists all over the place who are using that data to learn about where animals are when, and looking at how those populations are impacted by more houses being built in their habitat, and things like that. So I would suggest, if you're into wildlife but you're not really sure how to help, try out community science. It's really great. And if that's not your cup of tea, you can always look into volunteering at places like ours in your location, or donating.
Yeah, and there's lots of citizen scientist programs, like she said. There's a Christmas bird count, there's a beluga whale count. So yeah, there's lots of different opportunities for people to get involved.
Yeah, if you don't have iNaturalist on your phone, download it.
Yes,
Say that again.
iNaturalist.
I'm writing it down. I'm going to download it tonight.
I'll type it into the comments for you too.
We use that one fairly often by naturalists to just identify bugs or plants. There's a really active community on there that's super willing to help and participate.
That's amazing.
There's also stuff you can do with building nest boxes, and like Lily mentioned, volunteering places. Basically everywhere I know that works with animals needs volunteers, even if it's just a couple hours a day or a couple hours a week.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I'm writing these down so I don't forget. I have one more question for everyone, and I think it's a fun one. Do you have any, in your time working with wildlife, any of favorite stories, funny moments, things that have happened that you would like to look back on?
Yeah. So I don't know about other places, but I've worked a few places on my journey to coming to be at AWCC, and snow is oftentimes an issue in places I've lived, which hasn't always been Alaska. And I worked at a place that had netted tops on top of some bird mews, actually, and we had to shovel that in the middle of winter, which is funny because it flies everywhere, and then when you're all done, you get to lay in a nice hammock. So that was pretty great. The birds are, of course, not in there at the time.
Makes sense. You don't have snow coming down on them the whole time, right?
Yeah. Jumping into snow piles.
Yeah, snow does get to be a problem, especially on heavy snow years. It's, some really amazing things. We had some trumpeter swans that were nesting on zoo grounds, and they usually nest in the same area down by the creek that runs through the zoo. And I think it was in the early 90s, and it was like a record snowfall, but they were nesting in a different area, and we were all wondering why. And then there was a very quick warm up, and the traditional nesting area was completely flooded. And it's like they knew it was going to happen, so they chose a different nesting site, and that just blew me away.
That's amazing. That's exactly what you were saying. I believe it was Lily saying that pay attention to them because they'll tell you what's coming. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
And I guess
Sheila-
I'll tell you, sorry, I'll
No,
tell you
go
a
ahead.
memory that actually got me wanting to work with the birds permanently. We have a small western screech owl named Peanut, who, when I got here, she was terrified of everything. So one day I was going into her enclosure, bringing her mouse, and she came out of her little nest box that she's usually just hiding in the corner of, and she started making that call at me like, "Hey, where's my food? I know you're the food giver. Give it here." And then she just took the mouse, went back into her nest box, and I knew I wanted to work with the birds. Really adorable.
A moment you recognize the spark.
That's fantastic. Oh, wow. I think your jobs are all very cool. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you would want to talk about? And that's for everyone on the panel.
I saw that Leslie had asked a question asking what wisdom we've learned from working with wildlife. So I don't know if either of you guys wanted to give an anecdote for that too.
It's a great question.
It is. It's a really great question. Well, for the birds, I can definitely say patience is something you have to have a lot of, because it can take up to a year to get a bird to trust you. And once you have the trust, you're solid. Before you have it, everything's shaky. You don't know how the bird's going to react. You just have to constantly be patient and be willing to change what you're doing to accommodate what the bird's up to.
Yeah, and I think so many people underestimate the intelligence of animals. You're constantly seeing that they're learning things, figuring things out. So I think a lot of people just don't give animals credit for their intelligence.
Yeah. There's so many articles I've been reading recently, and they're just like, yep, we were wrong about this one too. They're way smarter than that.
Yeah, and the information just keeps coming in, and so every facility needs to keep changing with the times, and taking in the new information, and our jobs are never done. The habitats are never big enough. Where there's always more you can do, making things better. Fortunately, there's just a lot of great people working in the field, unselfish people, and I think that's one of the coolest things about working in a wildlife facility. It's not like other businesses where it's a competition. Any of us would be more than willing to tell anybody else anything we ever learned and share it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever worked in other jobs where I always have worked with people who care so deeply about what we're doing, which is great, because on days, even if we don't agree, we know we're still working to the same mission.
I love that. And I mean, I can tell just talking to the three of you that you're all passionate about what you do, and you're passionate about the animals that you work with. And Sitka is, of course, passionate about what she does and passionate about being the star of the show on camera right now. I just want to thank you all so much for being a part of this, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing, and Sitka for sharing your wisdom, of course. I have learned a lot already, and I feel like I have a whole list of things that I want to Google after this and just start to learn, and I'm going to download the apps, and it's very exciting. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we're going to bring Leslie back out to close us out.
Oh my gosh, y'all, this has been so amazing. I downloaded the app because I live where I can look at the Gastineau Channel, and I'm constantly taking pictures of the birds and the eagles and all the behavior of the water. Even you can see the currents from just up above enough. So I'm excited to contribute, and if that helps or adds to any of the research, I'll do it. I'll be of service. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Wow, I learned so much. And I just saw on the news that they're studying bears to learn about diabetes, because they see that they eat and they eat and they eat, and then they hibernate. And their blood sugar is stable. What is that? What can we learn from them about our own metabolisms and how we take care of ourselves better? It's exciting to see how deeply integrated you all are with wildlife and with nature. You're teaching us so much about how to go forward in more sustainable ways. So thank you for the work you do. My goodness. Irene, thank you for moderating this panel. What a nice conversation, right? Yeah?
It was great.
Yeah. Well, we are so excited for this play, The Spirit of the Valley, to open tomorrow evening. And we hope everyone will tune in. It's, as you mentioned, Irene, Frank Katasse has written a play that's funny, it's heartening, and there's this beautiful journey. The designers are so innovative, and so the work is beautiful too to look at. It just takes you right in. Ed Littlefield has uh, been the designer of the sound designer and has composed beautiful music and very much in the tradition of the Tlingit peoples, the Tlingit storytelling traditions. Nova Koch is our illustrator, scenic designer, and Rochelle has designed costumes. She's a local artist as well, and we're just really excited for you to see this show, and most of all, to have this beautiful story unfold. And with that, your heart starts to appreciate the environment, the animals, and all the wisdom that comes from what they offer us if we pay attention and we help take care of the land. So it's a great story. I hope you'll visit ptalaska.org or our Facebook page, Perseverance Theater Facebook page, for more information and tune in with us. It's great for students, for for young people, for families, your aunties, your uncles, your grandparents to watch along with you in these moments when we want to come together in various ways and virtual ways. My family, they actually make a time to see the show at the same time. And then we come together afterward on Zoom and have our own post-show conversation. So you can have your own viewing parties. Yeah. But any last words, Irene? And to our panelists, any last thoughts you would like to share with us before we sign off?
Thank you for having us and me. It was really fun to get to chat with Patrick and Sheila and talk about wildlife. That's what I love to do.
Definitely. This year, I've definitely missed being able to talk to so many people. It's just only able to do it online now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a difficult year for everyone, and I just wish everyone the best, and hopefully things will get a little bit back towards normal. And thank you all.
I'll echo those statements. Absolutely. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for teaching me and our audience. And it really is nice to get a chance to talk to people in this crazy, crazy year. And I'll say also that I'll echo what Leslie said about Spirit of the Valley. It's such a great show for the family. And also that, virtual theater can sound scary to people. They don't want to sit in front of their computers, but it really is an experience that it doesn't feel like you're watching a Zoom meeting. It really does feel like you're watching a whole new kind of show. There's so many innovative techniques, and you can chat while you're watching it, which is really cool. You can chat with the rest of the audience, which is something we don't even get to do with in-person theater. So I'd say give it a try. If you're nervous about it, give it a try.
Beautiful. Yes, thank you, Irene. It's true. I've also learned to get an HDMI cord, I think it is, to hook from my laptop to my TV so I can see it bigger. That, of course, doesn't feel like I'm working so much. I'm actually viewing a program on TV. So there's lots of ways to start to adjust to view so it's comfortable for you. But with that, oh my goodness, once again, thank you to all of our guests, Lily, Sheila, Sitka, Patrick, and our wonderful moderator, also Irene. Thanks for being with us tonight. We encourage all of our viewers, please be safe, wear your masks, and check us out. Come and see a show with us online, virtually. And with that, Unashish Hawa and Chinangeli, thank you for being with us tonight. Take good care of each other.
All right. Thank you.